Well, good morning. New York is a great city, and great cities are always changing, and that means that we have to change and adapt to how we meet basic needs in our city as well, and a good example is housing, and that's what brings us here today. Because today we're taking the first steps towards developing a kind of housing that our city needs far more of, apartments built to accommodate just one or two people. Specifically, we're launching a major design competition that we call ADAPT, A-D, capital A-P-T. We're inviting the private sector to creatively answer this challenge, come up with innovative models for buildings that offer apartments with new, smaller floor plans, models that are financially viable to build and to manage, and that will produce attractive apartments with competitively priced rents. And we'll select a winner and then help test this housing model in the market. In a few minutes, we'll provide more details about how this competition will work, but first let me provide some context. New York City's population is at an all-time high of some 8.4 million people, and we are still growing. And that's because our city remains a magnet for people eager to build better lives. And while these New Yorkers have widely varying backgrounds and income levels, most have something important in common. They're drawn here by jobs and opportunities that New York offers. Just as I was when I came here as a young man, landing my first job and spending 10 years living in a studio apartment while getting my career off the ground. And today there are about 1.8 million one- and two-person households in our city, but there are only about 1 million studio and one-bedroom apartments. You notice the mismatch. The result is obviously a housing crunch that not only has costly consequences, but also leads to illegally subdivided apartments. Now, we have the largest affordable housing plan in our city's history, 165,000 units for some 500,000 people. That is more people than live in Atlanta, Georgia. But we have found new ways to identify and crack down on those who illegally subdivide apartments. We are always looking for innovative new ways to help address both of these challenges, and today we're excited to announce a new pilot program that has the potential to do exactly that. It is based on a simple idea: allow the private sector to develop residential buildings composed of somewhat smaller apartments than current regulations now permit. A number of other cities, including Boston and London, are already doing something similar by encouraging development of what are sometimes called micro-units. The layout on display here gives you an idea for what such apartments might be like, and it is similar to how many New Yorkers live today. But this really is only a rough outline. We want a fuller picture in a more realistic frame, and that's why today we've issued a request for proposals to the city's Department of Housing, Preservation, and Development. Now, HPD happens to control a vacant parcel now used for parking on East 27th Street in Manhattan, and we're inviting development teams to come up with plans to build housing there with the requirement that at least 75% of the apartments be micro-units. And we expect these micro-units to be roughly 275 to 300 square feet. Our design guidelines stipulate that the apartments have ample access to fresh air and sunlight, and that development teams also think about making good use of shared space in the building. And we expect the apartments to be more affordable than many Manhattan studios. And these new units will allow us to create more affordable housing without any rent subsidies. So it's a good deal for the taxpayers as well. We are simply letting the market work. And there is a huge shortfall of studio and one-bedroom apartments in the city, and this we think is one way to create more of them and to make more of them more affordable. Now, the site we are using for this pilot project provides a good test case. It makes sense to try out this idea in Manhattan, where 3/4 of households have just one or two people. But this is not an idea limited to just Manhattan. Size and configuration of the 27th Street site are common to both public and privately owned lots throughout the city. So housing built for this pilot project could readily be adapted to other densely populated areas that are also well served by mass transit. Building housing in areas with good access to mass transit really is a key part of our Plan NYC sustainability agenda, as you all know. And so is creating new housing that, like micro-units, will serve our city's growing population while reducing our carbon footprint. Because we're using publicly owned land for this project, the city can maintain oversight of its safety, quality, and design. And another factor is that we're also able to waive certain zoning regulations governing how many such units can exist in one building because it is city land. The disposition of the city-owned land will go through the uniform land use review process spelled out by the city charter. We expect to select a competition winner by the end of the year and then complete that land use review and begin development in late 2013. Before turning the floor over to other speakers, let me point out that as part of this competition, we're also encouraging development teams to suggest regulatory changes that would make it easier to build micro-units in the future. Many of those regulations were adopted decades ago, long before building materials and designs that can be used today were around, and that limits our ability to provide the housing that New Yorkers need today. The ADAPT competition is a great way to begin the process of changing that. And I will say the competition was developed thanks to the leadership of Deputy Mayors Bob Steele and Linda Gibbs and a number of others with us today, starting with our Housing, Preservation, and Development Commissioner, Matt Wambua. Matt?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. It's an exciting day for HPD. We're proud to be launching this new initiative, which we expect will yield fresh and innovative housing models that meet the ever-evolving needs of New Yorkers. As the mayor was nostalgically recounting, as New Yorkers, we all relate to the challenge of finding accessible, right-sized, quality, affordable housing. It's a universal challenge that binds us all as New Yorkers, which is why the mayor launched the nation's most ambitious affordable housing program. But it's also why we continue to launch new initiatives like Adapt NYC in order to be able to meet the ever-changing needs of New Yorkers. As the mayor pointed out, we currently have a misalignment between the size of units as well as the existing stock. With this micro-units pilot, we're recognizing the current and the growing need for more affordable small apartments in New York City. Ultimately, the housing choices that Adapt NYC seek to create will serve a wide spectrum of small households and small family sizes, including young professionals, singles, couples, small families, artists, veterans, low and moderate income families, special needs populations, and the list goes on and on. With the design competition, we're going to have an opportunity to see what happens when we remove obstacles to create more efficient, right-sized homes. Ultimately, we're going to be looking for creativity in terms of the RFP responses. We're also going to be looking for affordability as well as imaginative design. It's a fantastic opportunity to create a model of permanent housing that helps us diversify and increase the stock of housing within New York City. And hopefully, to the extent that this is a successful pilot, we will look to expand these efforts. In closing, I just need to acknowledge some of our supporters and our partners in this project. Deputy Mayor Steele, Deputy Mayor Gibbs have been terrifically supportive. My counterparts at DCP and DOB, thank you, Rick Bell, for hosting us. And in particular, special thanks to Johanna Greenbaum at the Mayor's Office for her leadership, to Kay Matheny for her tenacity, to Gabrielle Amabili at HPD for crafting the RFP, and to Geraldine Perrine, my predecessor, whose relentless efforts continue to guide us. Thank you.
Matt, thank you. Next, the Commissioner for the Department of City Planning, Amanda Burden, and her comments. Amanda?
Thanks very much, Mayor. Really excited to be here. What an amazing day. We have had such a collaborative partnership with many of the agencies that are represented here today, but particularly HPD, as with the Inclusionary Housing Program. This new program, which we're calling ADAPT New York, really uses zoning innovation to broaden housing choices for New Yorkers. And with this new program, ADAPT, we are actually using design to define a new apartment model. And I hope you'll all walk through the layout that is on the floor behind me. I want to thank particularly certain city planning individuals are here today. Alex Washburn, the chief urban designer, and Cecilia Kushner, who has directed this project from city planning's point of view. This is a way to ensure that the city's housing meets the diverse needs of its residents, and I think you'll all agree that the apartment behind me is someplace that 1 and 2 family households would be delighted to live in. So I'm excited, and I want to thank everybody, especially Deputy Mayor Bob Steele and Johanna Greenbaum, for making today happen. And last but not least, Rick Bell, who always over the past almost 10 years has showcased innovation and made a huge difference in changing the landscape of New York City. Thanks.
Amanda, thank you. The city's buildings department has also played an active role in developing this competition, and I'd like to ask Buildings Commissioner Bob LiMandri to say a few words. Bob?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just short. Using zoning as a way to allow for more apartments is one way. As another part of the competition is we'll be looking for ideas from the community of ways that we can look at continuing to have the safest buildings in New York City by looking at ways that we can deal with code issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. And as mentioned, Geraldine Perini is here. She has worked for this city in government and out of government, never stops coming up with good ideas. She's was one of the most valuable members of our administration, and she continues to be a great asset to this city. Geraldine?
Thank you. Because when you work for Mayor Bloomberg once, even when you leave the government, you still work for him forever, which I'm delighted to continue to do. We're so excited at the Citizens Housing and Planning Council to be here today. This is really about experimentation and innovation, 2 things that are really the heart of New York, and that 2 things that the Bloomberg administration has been so brilliant at doing. The ability to try new ideas, put more choice out there in the housing market. For us, this work started with the work of Sarah Watson from our office, who began to look at household sizes and composition and discovered this huge mismatch in the underground housing market and the need for new housing. It also started in my own life, as my 2 children in their 20s just refused to move out of my apartment. So when you have a musician and a newly minted research librarian, you know, right. So the musician has actually just moved out, but my daughter may have to wait, you know, for one of these to come on the marketplace. So it's both personal, it's a policy issue, it's something that I think we all can relate to. It's about more choice. We're so excited. We think that the private market is going to respond with some incredibly innovative ideas. We'd like to really thank everyone here today, as well as the Architectural League, who was our partner in our original Making Room project, which you can see on our website called makingroomnyc.com. And we're looking forward to showing some of these respondents that you're going to get at an exhibition at the Museum of the City of New York in January, which will be called Making Room. Thank you.
Thank you. And lastly, Rick Bell from the American Institute of Architects. Rick?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, thank you all for coming here to the Center for Architecture. I'm not sure how many people have not been here before. We've been open almost 9 years, and our galleries and meeting spaces are designed to allow for this type of thing to happen. What I didn't have a chance to tell the mayor before is I'm moving into this first unit. People joke that I live here all the time. There's a pull-out couch, and I'm planning on being here tonight. And if you want to come by later on in the evening, we could have a cup of coffee together. Going last, everything has been said. I could add to that only by saying if the proverbial wisdom of location as to why people choose where to live, well, New York is the premier location, of course, of any city in the world. But I think it's a combination in looking for housing units of value and design. The creative class of young, recent graduates not being able to find a decent place to live without sharing an apartment legally or illegally puts a damper on, up till now, what has been possible. The idea that small is beautiful, and it's been said by Schumacher and others before, was the subject of a current issue of our magazine. I'm just going to quote, not myself, but myself quoting Schumacher, who worked for a different government in a different country. He said, well, many theoreticians who may or may not be too closely in touch with real life are still engaging in the idolatry of large size which with practical people in the actual world, there's a tremendous longing and striving to profit, if at all possible, from the convenience, humanity, and manageability of smallness. I think this unit proves that, and if it weren't enough to quote Schumacher, Natasha Bedingfield in Size Matters wrote, "It's the little things that you do that show me how big you are." Mr. Mayor, thank you all for being here.
That's very clever. Before taking questions, let me just summarize today's announcement for our Spanish-speaking New Yorkers. Nuestra ciudad está creciendo y los hogares de una o dos personas son las que más han crecido. Estamos anunciando un concurso para ideas, nuevas formas de crear más estudios y apartamentos de una recámara que necesitamos en nuestra ciudad.